June 2nd, 1978, approximately 9:15 in the evening. The Villa Capri Pizzeria sits at 2609 Independence Avenue in Kansas City, Missouri, a narrow storefront with red vinyl booths and a jukebox near the back wall. Two FBI agents from the Kansas City Organized Crime Squad are monitoring a wiretap planted inside the restaurant 3 weeks earlier. The bug wasn't meant for this. Supervisor William Ousley's team had installed it to pick up conversations about a string of murders connected to the River Key Entertainment District, a local gang war that had already produced car bombings and at least 3 bodies. The agents are listening for names of shooters. Instead, Carl Cork Savella and Carl Angelo DeLuna slide into a booth near the back. The Bee Gees' Stayin' Alive is playing on the jukebox. The two men begin talking, and what comes through the headphones isn't about Kansas City at all. It's about Las Vegas, casino revenues, a problem. With a manager at the Tropicana, a skim that isn't producing what it should. Distribution, shares that need adjusting. The agents look at each other. As Ousley later recalled, Las Vegas was the last thing on their minds. That accidental intercept would launch a 5-year federal investigation called Operation Strawman, the most extensive use of court-authorized electronic surveillance in the history of the Omnibus Crime Control Act. It would produce over 170 tape recordings, 2 landmark federal trials, and the conviction of 19 senior organized crime figures from 4 cities. It would dismantle permanently the Mafia's 30-year financial grip on Las Vegas. But none of that was the plan. The plan was to solve a murder. The rest happened because 2 men sat down in a pizza restaurant and talked about a money pipeline that almost nobody outside their world understood existed, and that almost nobody inside it could have explained from end to end. Everyone knows the mob built Vegas. It's a line in every documentary, every casino tour, every film that's ever been set on the Strip. What almost nobody knows is the machinery. How a Teamster trucker's $2 weekly paycheck deduction became a $62 million casino loan. How rigged coin scales and phantom chip deliveries extracted hundreds of thousands of dollars a month from 4 casinos simultaneously. How couriers in business suits carried cash in pockets sewn into their sport coats through Los Angeles International Airport. And how a meticulous Kansas City underboss divided the proceeds with handwritten ledgers that would, in the end, destroy everyone whose name appeared in them. The famous version of this story has names and outcomes. The version that matters has mechanics. The pipeline began 1,200 miles from the Strip in the office of a pension fund that had no business lending money to casinos. The Central States, Southeast and Southwest Areas Pension Fund was created in 1955 by Teamsters Vice President Jimmy Hoffa. Its structure was straightforward, a multi-employer, defined benefit pension plan governed by an 8-member board of trustees, 4 from the union side, 4 from management, headquartered in Chicago. Employers paid $2 per employee per week under collective bargaining agreements. In its first year, that generated roughly $10 million. By the early 1970s, assets had reached $1.5 billion. By the early 80s, $2.2 billion. 400,000 truckers, warehouse workers, and freight handlers contributed to it. The money was supposed to fund their retirements. Hoffa had a different understanding. As former federal prosecutor Edwin Steer put it, Hoffa viewed the fund not as a fiduciary responsibility, but as a means of winning friends and influencing people. Instead of investing in conventional securities, the fund poured money into real estate loans, hotels, shopping centers, casinos, at below-market interest rates of roughly 6%, extended to borrowers whose primary qualification was their relationship to organized crime. By 1963, nearly two-thirds of fund assets sat in real estate loans. By 1974, the fund had approved $1 billion in such lending. By 1977, $240 million had gone to Las Vegas hotels alone, and the fund held 56% of all outstanding loans in Clark County, Nevada. A pension plan for truck drivers had become the single largest creditor in the American casino industry. The Department of Labor, which was supposed to oversee this, didn't file its first lawsuit against the fund trustees until October of 1978, 23 years after the fund's creation. By then, the money had already built or financed the Dunes, the Stardust, Caesar's Palace, the Fremont, the Aladdin, Circus, and a half dozen other properties that would define the Las Vegas skyline for the next 30 years. The pipeline from Union, dues to mob-controlled casinos ran through one man. Alan Dorfman's connection to the Teamsters began in 1949 through his stepfather, Paul "Red" Dorfman, who ran the Chicago Waste Handlers Union and maintained deep ties to the Chicago outfit. At Paul's request, Hoffa steered the Michigan Conference of Teamsters Welfare Fund's insurance business to Allen's company, Amalgamated Insurance Agency, despite Allen having zero experience in the insurance industry. Those two fund accounts comprised 90% of the agency's revenue, generating over $3 million in commissions within 8 years. When Hoffa went to prison in March of 1967, he secretly assigned control of pension fund lending to Dorfman. 3 weeks later, fund trustees passed a resolution making Dorfman a special consultant. His formal title was deliberately vague. His actual power wasn't. No major loan moved without Dorfman's endorsement. He coordinated with mob bosses from multiple cities who each controlled specific trustees. And under his stewardship, the fund grew from $400 million to $1.5 billion, much of it flowing into organized crime ventures. He was convicted in 1972 of accepting a $55,000 kickback on a $15 million pension loan and served 9 months. He came back and resumed the same role. The FBI's Operation Pendorf, short for penetration of Dorfman, launched in 1979, placed hidden microphones in his insurance offices, and captured extensive evidence of his continued criminal activity. But the arrangement had worked for years because Dorfman didn't act alone. Each major crime family controlled at least one fund trustee, and since any single trustee could effectively block a loan, cooperation between families was essential. Roy Lee Williams, Kansas City Teamsters official and fund trustee who later became president of the entire International Brotherhood, admitted under oath to receiving $1,500 a month from Kansas City boss Nick Savella for 7 years in exchange for his vote on mob-connected loans. Cleveland's William Presser received the same monthly payment. The fund's own assets manager, Alvin Barron, was later jailed for accepting kickbacks. The interdependence was the system's structural strength and eventually its fatal vulnerability, because it meant every family had witnesses who could describe what every other family was doing. Into this machinery, in late 1973, walked a man who had no idea what he was entering. Alan Glick was 31 years old, a San Diego land developer, a Vietnam helicopter pilot who'd earned a Bronze Star and 3 combat air medals. He had no criminal record and no casino experience, precisely the qualities that made him useful. He could pass a Nevada Gaming Control Board background check, where actual mobsters couldn't. Glick had already acquired 2 small Las Vegas properties, the Hacienda and the Marina, when the Stardust in Fremont came up for sale. He needed financing. What happened next, reconstructed from Glick's own trial testimony, reveals how the machine processed a new acquisition. Glick contacted Alvin Barron, the fund's assets manager, who arranged a meeting at Teamsters headquarters in Chicago. Barron introduced him to Frank Rennie, a Milwaukee Teamsters trustee. Rennie told Glick to contact Frank Balistrieri, the boss of the Milwaukee crime family, though Glick would later claim he didn't know that. Glick called Barron back. Barron reaffirmed Balistrieri's influence with the pension fund. Balistrieri then contacted Nick Savella in Kansas City and Maish Rockman in Cleveland. Each man activated his respective trustee. Dorfman endorsed the loan. On August 23, 1974, the Central Alawi State's Pension Fund approved $62.75 million to the newly formed Argent Corporation, incorporated just 4 months earlier. Additional loans followed, including $25 million for casino remodeling, bringing total Teamsters financing to approximately $146 million. The kickbacks were immediate. Balistrieri received $75,000, Savella received $75,000, Fitzsimmons and Presser split $600,000. According to Cleveland underboss Angelo Leonardo's later Senate testimony, Balistrieri's sons were installed as Argent's legal counsel. And the critical condition, Frank Lefty Rosenthal was installed as de facto manager of all 4 Argent casinos on direct orders from Chicago bosses Tony Accardo and Joey Ayupa. Glick's name was on the gaming license. Rosenthal's hands were on the operation. At its peak, Argent controlled the Stardust, Fremont, Hacienda, and Marina, the second largest casino. Operation in Nevada behind only Howard Hughes. Rosenthal revolutionized the properties. He created the first race and sportsbook operated inside a casino at the Stardust, introduced female blackjack dealers who reportedly doubled the casino's table income within a year, and hosted his own television show on KSHO-TV featuring Frank Sinatra and Bob Hope. His official titles: Executive Consultant, Food and Beverage Director, Entertainment Director, were deliberately vague to avoid gaming license requirements. The Nevada Gaming Control Board voted 3-0 against his license application in January of 1976 in a hearing chaired by a young state official named Harry Reid. The Gaming Commission voted 5-0 to reject. Rosenthal stayed anyway under different titles for 3 more years. Glick believed, or said he believed, he was running a legitimate business. Every person around him had been placed there by a different crime family for a single purpose he wouldn't fully grasp until March of 1975, when Nick Savella summoned him to a Kansas City hotel room, refused to shake his hand, placed a gun on the table, and demanded $1.2 million. When Glick hesitated, Savella named each of his children and their ages. According to Glick's testimony, Savella told him that since perhaps he found his own life expendable, he was certain Glick wouldn't find his children's lives expendable. Glick paid. The loan bought the casinos. What happened inside them was the entire point. The skim, the systematic removal of casino cash before it was entered into the books as revenue, operated through 2 distinct methods running simultaneously, and understanding how each one worked at the mechanical level is understanding why this operation produced money for nearly a decade before anyone could prove it. The primary Stardust skim targeted the hard count room where coins from slot machines were weighed and tallied. After midnight, security guards opened every slot machine on the floor and emptied the coins into buckets. Coins from all 4 Argent properties were transported by armored car to the Stardust and pooled for counting. The counting relied on ultra-sensitive scales, calibrated to weigh coins and calculate totals automatically. Argent hired a scale mechanic who recalibrated those scales to read approximately 10% light. 4,000 quarters, $1,000, registered as 900. The surplus never appeared on any revenue report. No taxes were paid on it. It simply ceased to exist on paper. Jay Vandermark, the slot department manager who oversaw the rigged scales, was reportedly extracting $300,000 a week from Argent properties. He disappeared in 1976. His body turned up in Mazatlan, Mexico, his head bashed in while sunbathing. The surplus coins needed to become portable cash. Instead of sending change girls to the cashier's cage, standard casino practice, the Stardust placed locked coin cabinets around the casino floor, stocked with unweighed surplus coins. Change girls deposited customer bills into the cabinets and took coin rolls. The bills, untraceable paper currency, were collected nightly. Each cabinet held up to $10,000 in bills when emptied. An additional change booth was set up on the Stardust floor, completely unregistered with any government authority. 100% of money flowing through that booth went directly to the mob. It operated undetected for years. Senior casino executives with count room access, Bobby Stella, the casino manager, and Phil Ponto, a made member of the Chicago outfit embedded as a Stardust employee, physically removed the converted cash. Carl Thomas, who would later testify for the prosecution, described occasions when he simply stuffed $100 bills into his trouser and coat pockets. Nobody stopped him. He was away. Casino executive walking out of his own building. The table game skim ran a different mechanism entirely. In normal casino operations, when a blackjack or craps table runs low on chips, a fill slip is generated, a document authorizing the transfer of chips from the cashier's cage to the table. One copy goes into the table's locked drop box. In the skim, bogus fill slips were generated for chip deliveries that never occurred. Complicit cage personnel issued chips against these phantom slips. The chips were passed to Confederate players who cashed them at the cage. Since the fill slip accounted for the chips leaving the cage balanced, but the money was gone. Nevada Gaming Control Board agents later conducted covert surveillance and confirmed it. On many occasions, there was no match between the chip fills delivered to tables and the fill slips in the drop boxes, but the cage was always in balance. The board concluded that money in the amount of the bogus fill slips was being removed from the cage. The system exploited a basic truth about casinos. They are the most cash-intensive legal businesses in America, handling millions of dollars in currency daily, and a small percentage diverted before counting is nearly invisible. The Tropicana ran a parallel but independent operation. Nick Savella had gained control of the Tropicana without a Teamsters loan, which meant he had no obligation to share proceeds with other families, though he voluntarily cut Chicago in as a show of respect. The man Savella placed inside was Joe Agosto, born Vincenzo Pianetti in Agrigento, Sicily, an illegal alien who had assumed the identity of a deceased Ohio businessman. Agosto purchased the Folies Bergère production show and became its executive producer, a position that didn't require a gaming license. From that perch, he gained enormous influence over casino management, guided by a single operational insight he later articulated to investigators. If you control the cage, you control the entire operation, and if you're going to steal, you have to control the cage. On Agosto's orders, Carl Wesley Thomas was installed as casino manager, a man who, by his own testimony, had been skimming from casinos for over 20 years, beginning at Circus Circus in 1969. The Tropicana skim used exclusively the bogus fill-slip method and operated from April 1978 through February 1979. The target was $50,000 a month. Actual documented yield ran between $40,000 and $80,000 monthly. The court-documented total was $280,000, though actual amounts were certainly higher. The entire purpose of the skim was to leave no paper trail. If you're still with me on this one, a subscribe would mean a lot, because the money didn't stay in Nevada. Every Tuesday afternoon, Bobby Stella left the Stardust carrying a brown paper bag. FBI agent Emmett Michaels testified to the full sequence based on direct surveillance. Stella drove to a hardware store parking lot on Maryland Parkway and met Phil Ponto. Ponto took the bag and drove to his home off Paradise Road near the Las Vegas Hilton. On Sundays, Ponto placed the bag in his car trunk, drove to church, then spent 2 hours driving circuitously through shopping mall parking lots, standard counter surveillance. He drove to a second hardware store on Tropicana Avenue and met Joseph Tallarico, a Teamster official from Chicago who arrived in a rental car wearing a business suit. Tallarico took the bag, drove west on Interstate 15 toward California, and at the second rest area outside Las Vegas, transferred cash bundles into special pockets sewn inside his sport coat. He drove to LAX, flew to Chicago, and visited outfit boss Joe Ayupa to deliver the money. The sequence repeated weekly. Both Ponto and Tallarico were later hauled before a grand jury. Even when granted immunity, both refused to testify and accepted jail for contempt. They never answered a single question. The Tropicana money moved on a separate track. Complicit employees collected the skimmed cash and delivered it to Augusto. Augusto passed it to courier Carl Caruso for transport to Kansas City. Caruso made at least 18 trips, paid $1,000 per delivery. The very first skim delivery, $1,500 in April of 1978, was hand-carried by Carl DeLuna himself. Chicago's share traveled from Kansas City via Anthony Chiavala Sr., Nick Savella's nephew, and in a detail that captures something about how deeply the organization penetrated legitimate institutions, a retired Chicago police officer. In Kansas City, DeLuna managed the distribution with a bookkeeper's precision. He maintained handwritten ledgers documenting every skim payment, amounts, dates, recipients, phone numbers, travel records. He used a bank of payphones to maintain contact with Augusto at the Tropicana, rotating locations to avoid detection, though the FBI had tapped those phones too. The physical location where much of the distribution business was conducted was the home of Josephine Marlowe, a Savella relative in the Philomena Acres neighborhood north of downtown. On November 26, 1978, Carl Thomas and Joe Augusto flew in from Las Vegas and sat down with Nick Savella, Cork Savella, and DeLuna. Thomas delivered a recorded 6-hour explanation of exactly how casino skimming works, boasting about 2 decades of experience in detail the FBI couldn't have manufactured. Every word was captured on the hidden microphone. Those became the Marlowe tapes, a 112-page transcript that would form a centerpiece of the prosecution's case. The numbers on both sides of the comparison reveal the scale. The 5 families of New York each maintained between 100 and 250 made members. Kansas City had perhaps 30. Yet this smaller family, operating through institutional leverage rather than street muscle, had engineered a financial pipeline that rivaled anything the New York families had ever built. The Argent skim split initially among 3 families: Kansas City, Milwaukee, and Cleveland, the 3 that controlled the Teamsters trustees who'd approved the loan. When a dispute erupted between Kansas City and Milwaukee over shares, Chicago was called in to arbitrate. According to Angelo Leonardo's sworn Senate testimony, Chicago settled the dispute and began receiving 25% of the skim. At peak, each of the four families received between $40,000 and $100,000 a month from the Stardust alone. Balistrieri, captured on wiretaps, called his share a transfusion. Roy Williams and William Presser each received approximately $1,500 a month, their ongoing fee for keeping their votes aligned. The court-proven total from both Strawman cases exceeded $2 million. The Nevada Gaming Control Board documented $7 million skimmed from slot machines alone between 1974 and 76. Broader estimates cited by the Mob Museum and published histories range between 7 and 15 million total from the Argent casinos. The gap between what prosecutors proved and what actually moved is the gap between what leaves a paper trail and what was designed never to. The pipeline required silence from dozens of participants across 4 states. The only tool available to enforce that silence was violence. And violence, by its nature, generated the very law enforcement attention that silence was supposed to prevent. That contradiction consumed the operation from the inside. January 20th, 1983. Approximately 1:07 in the afternoon, Alan Dorfman and associate Erwin Weiner walked through the parking lot of the Hyatt Lincolnwood Hotel, 4500 West Toohey Avenue in Lincolnwood, Illinois, after completing a bank transaction. 2 men in ski masks approached from behind. One shouted, "This is a stick-up," but opened fire immediately. Dorfman was shot 7 times in the head with a .22 caliber handgun, the signature weapon of mob assassinations. 8 cartridges were recovered at the scene. Weiner wasn't touched. He's widely believed to have set Dorfman up. The timing was devastating for the defense. Dorfman had been convicted a month earlier in the Senator Cannon bribery case and faced up to 55 years at sentencing scheduled for February 10th. 1 week before his murder, he'd been indicted in San Francisco on additional charges. As CBS reporter John Drummond summarized the mob's calculus, Alan, at 60 years of age, can't take hard time anymore. He's going to talk. Patrick Healy of the Chicago Crime Commission said it plainly. A lot of people in the criminal world would sleep better that night knowing Dorfman was silenced. The murder, the 1,081st gangland-style killing the commission had recorded since 1919, was never solved. Investigators focused on suspected outfit enforcers Frank Schweiss and Anthony Panzica, but never filed charges. Tony Spilotro's arc traced the same contradiction at a larger scale. Sent to Las Vegas in 1971 by Iupa and Accardo to protect the scheme and serve as Chicago's eyes and ears, Spilotro was granted what amounted to a franchise to steal, permission to run his own criminal enterprises in exchange for safeguarding the operation. He formed the Hole in the Wall gang, operating out of the Gold Rush Pawn Shop 1 block off the Strip, targeting casinos, luxury homes, and jewelry stores. On July 4th, 1981, police surrounded Bertha's Gifts and Home Furnishings during a burglary and arrested 6 gang members, tipped off by informant Sal Romano. Spilotro's violence, his affair with Rosenthal's wife Gary McGee, and the relentless law enforcement attention he attracted enraged the outfit leadership. After the Strawman convictions, the heat Spilotro had generated was blamed, with considerable justification, for accelerating the investigation that destroyed the entire operation. The man sent to protect the scheme had become the single greatest threat to it. In January of 1986, at the Czech Lodge in North Riverside, Illinois, Tony Accardo authorized the hit. On June 14, 1986, Tony and his brother Michael were lured to a meeting, told, according to later testimony, that Tony was being promoted to capo. They were beaten to death in the basement of a house in Bensonville, Illinois. Their bodies were driven south and buried in a cornfield near Enos, Indiana, approximately 5 miles from Ayupa's property. A farmer named Mike Kintz discovered them 9 days later, 5 feet deep. Nobody was charged until the 2005 Family Secrets case. James Marcello was convicted in September 2007 and sentenced to life. The system needed every one of these people alive and silent to function. It killed them to keep them silent, and the killing made the silence impossible. Here's the question that sits at the center of all of it. Was this operation ever structurally sustainable, or was its destruction built into its own design the moment it required human beings to move the money? Was there any version of this pipeline that doesn't end with the people who ran it either dead or testifying against each other? Tell me what you think in the comments. The investigation that grew from the Villa Capri intercept expanded into the most comprehensive electronic surveillance operation the FBI had ever conducted against organized crime. Starting May 5, 1978, Kansas City agents obtained progressive court orders authorizing wiretaps and bugs across 4 states. Residences of DeLuna, Carl Civella, and Chiavala. Business offices of Dorfman, Joey Lombardo, Maish Rockman, and Angelo LaPietra. Balistrieri's office and restaurant in Milwaukee, and a bank of payphones DeLuna used to maintain contact with Agosto at the Tropicana. Those payphone wiretaps proved, in Owsley's words, extraordinarily productive. On February 14, 1979, Valentine's Day, Owsley's team intercepted Carl Caruso at the Kansas City airport and seized $80,000 in skim funds. It was the first time skim money had ever been physically caught in transit. DeLuna's handwritten ledgers were seized in the same series of raids, and those records, meticulous as an accountant's, would become the prosecution's most devastating exhibit. Strawman 1 targeted the Tropicana operation, indicted November 5, 1981, 17 counts against 11 defendants. Nick Civella's case was severed due to terminal cancer. He was released March 1, 1983, and died 11 days later at Menorah Medical Center in Kansas City, age 71. Joe Agosto pled guilty and became the government's principal witness. He died August 29, 1983, of an apparent heart attack while in federal custody, age 61, the second key prosecution witness to die before the proceedings concluded. The trial of the remaining defendants produced convictions across the board. DeLuna received 30 years. Carl Civella received 30 to 35 years. Charles Moratina received 20 years. Carl Thomas received 15, later reduced to 2 for his cooperation. Anthony Chiavala Sr. received 15. The Eighth Circuit affirmed every conviction in May of 1985. Strawman II was the larger case, the Argent Operation. Indicted September 30, 1983, 15 defendants charged with conspiring to steal more than $2 million from the Stardust in Fremont between January 1974 and September 1983. The prosecution's witness list reads like a directory of the system's own components turned against it. Alan Glick described the frontman scheme, how he'd been steered from Barron to Rennie to Balistrieri, how each contact activated the next, how the loan approval was guaranteed before the application was even filed. Angelo Leonardo, Cleveland's underboss, serving life plus 103 years, the highest-ranking mob figure to cooperate with the government up to that point, explained how skim shares were distributed among 4 families and who received what percentage. Roy Williams, the former Teamsters president, convicted separately of attempting to bribe Senator Howard Cannon, detailed how corrupt trustees approved the loans and how much they were paid to do it. Carl Thomas walked the jury through the mechanical process of extracting money from a count room, step by step, with the specificity of someone who'd done it for 20 years. And DeLuna's seized ledgers, the handwritten records of every distribution, every payment, every phone call, sat in evidence page after page of meticulous bookkeeping that documented a criminal enterprise with the precision of an accounting firm. A juror later said everything was right there in front of them so they could see it. The man whose organizational discipline made the distribution system work had created the single most damaging piece of evidence against it. That's the structural paradox embedded in every operation that requires human intermediaries. The chain of hands that makes the pipeline function is also the chain of witnesses that can describe it under oath. The more efficient the system, the more people can explain it. The more meticulous the records, the more thoroughly the records prove the crime. On January 21st, 1986, after 30.5 hours of deliberation, the jury convicted all 5 remaining defendants on all counts. Joey Ayupa, 28.5 years and $80,000 in fines. Jackie Cerrone, 28 years and $80,000 in fines. Joey Lombardo, 16 years. Angelo LaPietra, 16 years. Milton Rockman, 24 years. Balistrieri had already pled guilty and received 10 years concurrent with an existing 13-year sentence. His sons, John and Joseph, were acquitted. Across both Strawman cases, 19 mob leaders were convicted. The leadership of 4 organized crime families, Kansas City, Chicago, Milwaukee, Cleveland, was effectively dismantled in a single prosecutorial campaign that had begun with a microphone in a pizzeria and a conversation nobody was supposed to hear. If understanding exactly how the money moved from a trucker's paycheck to a mob boss's pocket, every hand, every handoff, every rigged scale and phantom fill slip is the kind of thing you came here for. Like tells me to keep going. The Stardust closed November 1st, 2006, and was imploded on March 13th, 2007. Its 32-story tower, the tallest building ever brought down on the Strip. Resorts World Las Vegas occupies the site. The hacienda was imploded on New Year's Eve, 1996, as the centerpiece of a Fox television special. Mandalay Bay replaced it. The dunes came down in October of 1993. Steve Wynn built the Bellagio on its footprint. The dancing fountains perform exactly where the money once disappeared. The marina wasn't demolished at all. Its original tower was absorbed into the MGM Grand when it opened in 1993, still standing inside a larger structure, invisible. And the Tropicana imploded October 9th, 2024, the last true mob building on the Las Vegas Strip. A baseball stadium for the relocated Oakland Athletics is under construction, where Joe Agosto once ran the Foley's Bergère and Carl Wesley Thomas, stuffed $100 bills into his trouser pockets. The Central States Pension Fund, the instrument that made all of it possible, received $35.8 billion in federal rescue money in December of 2021, the largest pension bailout in American history, to cover the hole left by decades of mismanagement that began with Hoffa and continued long after the mob was gone. The consent decree that stripped trustees of investment authority lasted 40 years. It was finally dissolved in June of 2023. During those 40 years, not a single ERISA violation was found. Only the Fremont still operates on the old downtown street under different ownership with a different count room and scales that read true. The pipeline that ran through all of these places moved tens of millions of dollars through 4 states for the better part of a decade. It was built by men who understood institutions, pension funds, corporate structures, gaming commissions, interstate commerce, better than the institutions understood themselves. And it was destroyed by a single microphone hidden in a Kansas City pizza restaurant, planted by agents who were looking for something else entirely, on a night when the jukebox was playing Stayin' Alive.